5 minutes.
Cool.
No.
Hey Jess, we're gonna start probably in like 5 minutes. Just want to give you a heads up.
Thank you. Cool, thanks.
First event of the morning.
Driving down to Fort Hill, Virginia, after this for bombs in the town hall. It's been a little bit. Waiting for that. That's tomorrow. So I'm going to that tomorrow.
Congrats, and you know Peter Morris.
Yeah.
He goes to White House.
Usually, yeah. We all do a lot of stuff, but he's usually there. Yeah, he's in, last time I checked, he was still in Charlotte. Back in, that's what it was.
Morning. I'm very well, thanks. You guys all good? There, you guys good on sound? Excellent. I'm just gonna pull this to pause.
We got tape. It's gonna be long. We come in here and leave. I'm gonna make it start. Barely do it.
Yeah, he's still in April.
How are you doing?
Good in here.
Good.
I've already learned to try.
Third week.
Very weak.
You do that. Yeah, well.
We'll calm
Maybe it was
down.
way.
Just know that
So,
I'll send you somewhere.
It's trying.
Just a lot.
I'll try.
Yes, do you travel?
No. He's going out of town.
Right.
I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
So it's been interesting. Yeah. That's right.
Luckily this year, guys.
Right.
That's tricky for us. Here we go.
That,
Morning, guys.
I am phoneless, so somebody give me the time.
9:57.
9:57, okay.
You gotta start early.
I'll wait another minute or so, but yeah, I've got a 10 o'clock, so I don't mind getting started a little early. We'll wait a second. It feels strange not to have a phone.
Make it naked. I briefly forgot my iPhone.
It's like
Yesterday, I walked out of my booth and walked halfway across the room. I didn't have it. I was like, ah!
Yeah, I feel like right now I have to go rush somewhere because. Tell me when we get that 9:59.
Not there yet.
4 minutes.
So you all tell me what you thought of last night, off the record. As the cameras turn.
I was watching the Reds win 15-2 against the Cardinals. They never beat. They had.
We were watching someone win 15-2 as well.
Oh, really? They had multiple guys who had 4 and 5. One guy was 5 for 5. Or a guy who they just called up this month. The Reds. The Cardinals usually, beat the tar out.
Who was on Monday Night Football?
With the Saints and the Falcons. Falcons won 45-30. Watch that.
I think they knew we better score some points or no one's going to be watching. So
I would be interested to see the ratings.
It's 9:59.
9:59. Okay, let's count it down. We'll be fair. We'll start right at 10. I'll be a good chair. Baseball is. Are there any races left? Wild card?
The Mets, yeah.
Who are the two teams right now
Well, the
on the
National-
national?
The Mets and the Giants are ahead. The Cardinals are still in it.
How far behind?
Not much, not much.
Who's 1 or 2 in wild card?
Mets are one, Giants are two.
Mets or Giants have been fading then.
And then, yes, and in the American League, the Orioles and Toronto are tied, Toronto at the top spot. That's, Detroit is still, Baltimore has lost a few games, Detroit is still, so Detroit's still, and Seattle is still.
Okay, it must be 10.
It is 10.
All right, let's do it. Good morning, everyone. Javier Becerra, Chairman of the House Democratic Caucus. I'm going to fly solo today. Our Vice Chairman, Joe Crowley, was not able to make it this morning. And so I'll just go through some of what we see for this week. And surprise, surprise, here we are, the final week of the fiscal year before our government shuts down because Congress must appropriate monies to keep our federal government operating. And is anyone surprised that we are 4 days away from watching our government shut down? Republicans in the Congress have made this a habit, unfortunately. And so here we are, waiting till we get to the very edge of the cliff to find out if all the agencies, whether it's Social Security, whether it's the Department of Homeland Security, whether it's the FBI, whether it's the food safety inspectors, the air traffic controllers, if they'll be on duty come October 1st. The Senate looks like it's preparing to vote on a short-term resolution to keep our government functioning, but let's look like it's going to be dead on arrival today, and so we'll probably go another day without knowing all the facts and where we will go. The solution is pretty simple. We had agreed bipartisanly a year ago, back in December, on how to move forward a budget for this coming fiscal year, with an agreement on how much we would allocate in funding for investments. But early on this year, as you recall, the House Republican members balked at the agreement that had just been reached a few months before in December and have chosen not to abide by that budget number to date. And that's why we are in this crisis, and we'll see where we go. But the majority, Republican majority in the House and Republican majority in the Senate, have votes that could let them pass what they like, but wouldn't have been unable to do it. I should mention that while this crazy game of fiscal chicken is played by Republicans against Republicans, some 2,100 United States citizens who are women who are pregnant or who have shown evidence of possible Zika virus infection are now in danger of giving birth to a child that will be born with abnormalities that may last a lifetime. We've been told, if that's the case, that some of these children will, on top of the travesty of being born with these abnormalities, cost that family and American taxpayers some $10 million a child over the life of that child if they are born with abnormalities caused by the Zika virus. If you have 200 such children born in this country, that would, they themselves would, in cost to provide them with health care and services, would cost the same amount that the president had first requested at the beginning of the year to make sure that no American ever contracted the Zika virus. So when someone says to you, delaying action in Congress has no consequences, talk to those pregnant women who today are infected by the Zika virus. We'll find that Republicans are refusing to allow a overwhelmingly supported measure in the Senate dealing with support for the residents of Flint who have seen their water contaminated with lead by the actions of state officials, continue to have to wait while Republicans in the Congress refuse to allow funding to help clean up the lead contamination, move forward in Flint, Michigan. And that's another, again, a battle among Republicans about what to do for the 100,000 residents, several thousand, I think some 9,000 or 10,000 children in Flint who are waiting to be able to drink water out of their own tap at their home. I could talk to you about the fact that we've been allowed no votes in this House of Representatives or in Congress on dealing with gun safety measures to prevent people who shouldn't be in possession of firearms from buying them. I could talk to you about the need to cover the wildfire damage that's occurring in the West and how we're not tackling that the way we should. We could talk to you about a lot of things that have been left undone, but most importantly, we need to have our federal government operating in order to do any of these things, and so that's why this week we need to have a budget. We hope Republicans stop their internal feuding and come together and get this done. I'll close by simply saying it matters who's running government, and it makes a big difference if you have someone who understands how to do it and knows how to get it done. And last night, we saw two people who were vying to be our next president of the United States. One had command of the facts and of the issues. One showed the experience to lead. One of those two candidates demonstrated that she is not just fit to be president of the United States, but is ready on day one to be president of the United States. And that's why we want to make sure that on November 8th people get out to vote, because we're going to make a big decision that will have major consequences for the lives of so many people. With that, I'll yield and see if there are any questions.
Mr. Chairman, can you talk a little bit about this Flint funding issue here? I mean, are Democrats going to, completely say, okay, we're not going to vote for anything unless that is in there? Is that the definitive thing? Because we're hearing, this vote is probably going to, fall short over in the Senate, and I guess the options are either go clean or then put flip money in. And I guess the follow-up would be, if it is clean, would that be hard for you guys to say no to?
So we're facing a circumstance where the majorities in the House and the Senate, Republican majorities, dictate what happens. And they're trying to dictate the terms of this budget that moves forward, at least temporarily. And what we're simply saying is abide by your previous agreement. And if you wish to do anything more than that, then you have to do it on a bipartisan basis. One of those things that we've requested that they do or include in a must-pass measure would be the emergency funding that's been held up for over a year by Republicans for Flint, Michigan. It is an emergency. And if you don't think it is, then go take your family to go live in Flint and have to drink the water there. Maybe that's what Congress should do. Maybe we should convene the Congress of the United States in Flint, Michigan to see if we could get these politicians to take action. So we believe it should have been done a year ago. but certainly it can be done now, and the Senate proved by a overwhelming bipartisan vote that we can do this. House Republicans continue to play games with the funding from Flint, Michigan recovery, and I think it's unfortunate. But if Republicans are talking about doing something more than just the straight fiscal 3-year funding proposal, the continuing resolution as it's called, and they want to include other matters, then we think that Flint should be one of those. And it is up to them to make sure that if they want to tinker with this bill, that they do it in a bipartisan manner so it can actually get through and we don't find them leading to a government
But
shutdown.
that sounds like a little bit like you guys are using your leverage a little bit like a threat, but you're saying, okay, Flint has to be in this, or we're not going to provide the votes, because you know that they need Democratic votes to pass this at the end of the day.
Chad, Flint should have been done a year ago. It hasn't. If we're going to do something, it should be Flint. And someone should explain to the families, someone should explain to the children in Flint, Michigan, why they're unwilling to provide resources to help clean up the water in Flint's water system. And if you take a look at this bill that's being discussed, it includes other things beyond just keeping our federal government open. And so if Republicans think it's so important to include other things, then we believe that it's time now for them to include Flint, Michigan resources. And I don't think that's out of order, and we don't think that that's a demanding anything. It's trying to do what people expect, that their government won't abandon them when they need it. I don't think it helps for anyone here in Congress who's not willing to help the folks in Flint, Michigan to be able to go home and say, I've got your back. We're here as members of Congress. We're federal legislators, not just state legislators or city or county officials. We're federal legislators, and we all have a responsibility to help the folks in Flint, Michigan, the way we should help the folks in Louisiana who suffer from the consequences of devastating flooding, or the folks in the western states who have suffered from these massive wildfires. And we think it's appropriate to try to do what the people would like us to do, what they think we should do. Yes?
Chairman, last night Donald Trump repeatedly interrupted Hillary Clinton and talked over her multiple times. Do you think that kind of behavior in a debate like that, do you think that's sexist?
Certainly, Donald Trump showed disrespect, not just for Hillary Clinton, but for the American people, for the American voters. I think we all wanted to hear the responses. You don't need to constantly hear someone badgering or interrupting the other speaker, especially when the other speaker gives you the courtesy and respect to let you respond when a question is posed to you. But then again, I think Donald Trump essentially showed who he is. He gave us a sense of his character and his temperament. I don't think it's out of the question to say that he demonstrated that he's not qualified to engage in a respectful debate. And if he can't engage in a respectful debate, I doubt most people would consider him qualified to be president of the United States. He came unhinged. I think we saw that on several occasions. And I think that's the last thing you want for a guy who's going to, a president who will have his or her finger over the nuclear button. Someone who comes unhinged so easily. Yeah.
How do you think that Hillary Clinton specifically targeted or might have appealed to undecided voters in that debate? What did she do to possibly convince folks who haven't yet decided?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that first Hillary Clinton showed that she is prepared to lead this country. She showed that she has a command of the facts, a command of the issues that most Americans believe are important to address. And I believe she gave us some good specifics, some real detail on how she'll get things done. She started by talking about how you get America to continue to increase on those 50 million jobs that have been created under President Obama by focusing on the middle class. Unlike Donald Trump, who wants to do trickle-down economics, where you start by giving tax breaks to the wealthiest and see if some of that trickles down to benefit middle class and working folks. She said the real job creators in America, these are my words, but essentially what she was saying was that the real job creators in America are the working class and the middle class. If the middle class has disposable income so they can replace that old clothes washer or their older car, someone has to build and service those products and items, and so you keep America moving when the middle class is doing well, and she made it very clear. She also, I thought, was right on the mark when she talked about how the future is in the hands of our children, and if they can't get educated in decent schools, public schools, and then go on to college without suffering from mountains of debt, it's going to be tough to believe that they'll be ready. And she talked about how she would try to fight for, if there's a Congress willing to work with her, she'll get us a debt-free college tuition plan for America's students, which benefits people like me who are parents. So I think she made it very clear she's ready to lead, and she's got the ideas that are future-looking and also going to bring some real change to this country, that working Americans who've not been able to benefit the way rich Americans have, it'll get them going. Yeah.
What do you think of the fact that Trump agreed with Clinton last night that people on watch lists should not be able to use or acquire guns?
Well, I hope my Republican colleagues here in Congress who watched the debate or have heard of its results since will understand that the nominee and leader of their party is saying that it's time for us to act on sensible gun safety measures. One of those being making sure that if there's someone who cannot fly on planes in America because they're too risky and they're on a terror watch list, that we should not allow them to walk into a gun shop and walk out with an assault rifle. I would hope our Republican colleagues would listen to their party leader and their nominee for President of the United States. Unfortunately, I don't think they will. And unfortunately for the American people, I don't think Republicans will. But it would be great if, for once, some of the folks in Congress who are less than a week away from shutting down our government and from blocking gun safety measures like no-fly, no-buy, would pay attention to the American people, because by overwhelming numbers, 85-90%, Americans would like to see this no-fly, no-buy proposal become law. So listen to your own nominee, I would say to my Republican colleagues, and maybe we could make some progress.
Do you think he was sincere?
I'll take him at his word. I don't take him at his word on everything, but on this one I will. He agreed with Secretary Clinton on several occasions, which I think shows two things. One, Hillary Clinton's got some good ideas that can reach across the aisle and get the support of the Republican nominee. And two, there were at least a few ideas where we got a sense of where Donald Trump stood, because he essentially allowed Hillary Clinton to articulate the idea and then said, I agree with her. Other questions? Mike?
Back to the CR. Dan Kildee and a number of others in your caucus say that you would not vote for a CR if it did not include the Flint language. How widespread is that sentiment, and do you agree? Would you also not vote for any CR that did not include Flint?
There's widespread concern among Democrats in Congress that waiting over a year to provide relief to the 100,000 residents in Flint, Michigan, is outrageous and unconscionable when you've got children who we know were drinking lead-contaminated water and who we know today are still afraid to drink the water from their tap. So we believe it's time to act. It was time to act over a year ago and not wait until Governor Snyder in Michigan decides he's going to do more to try to help his own people. And so we believe this is the time to do it. If we're going to have a vehicle that can allow us to pass a measure that provides some relief to the people of Flint, Michigan, we're going to try to make that happen. But again, we don't control the House or the Senate. Republicans do. They can run pretty much anything they want through this place. And as we see, they haven't been able to run very much, and we're less than a week from shutting down our government as a result of Republican inaction. But we're going to fight for the people of Michigan. We want them to know we've got their back, just like we want the folks in Louisiana to know that we've got their back after the flooding, and we want just all Americans to know we've got their back. Certainly we want to fight to get the Zika funding that Republicans have blocked, so that Americans know that, especially pregnant women, we've got your back. Other questions?
But would you vote no?
I have to see what the bill is. Republicans haven't yet provided us a bill that we can vote on to see what it is. But certainly, I'm not interested in playing this game that Republicans play always at the very end of the year when we're about to go over the cliff, that they try to insert things that they want that they can't pass otherwise, and they try to put it into a must-pass bill, like a bill to keep our government open, keep it from shutting down. And I want to see what they put in it. And if we're going to put anything in it, it should be measures like Flint, Michigan resources, or funding to deal with the Zika virus, things that are critical. Any final questions?
You concerned about being too clean, though? I mean, you said you're talking about putting things in it, and I asked you about that earlier. What about if they say, okay, let's swab the decks and really force your guys' hand and say, all right, how can you not vote for a clean CR just to avoid a shutdown?
I'd rather scrub this must-pass legislation to keep our government open and make sure that only items that really must be in it are included. Because what happens is it's the shenanigans that's being played now, where Republicans are fighting against Republicans on what to include in this bill. Meanwhile, everyone else has to watch as we teeter on the edge of the cliff. And so, from my perspective, given that we've seen Republicans play this game before, I'd rather see a clean bill to keep our government from shutting down than play this other game. There are important matters that we should pass. Resources for the people of Flint, Michigan, resources to fight the Zika virus, resources to help flooding victims in Louisiana, resources to help wildfire victims in the western states. There are a number of things that we have to do. But I don't want to put in jeopardy the ability of air traffic controllers, food safety inspectors, the FBI, all the personnel we rely on day to day to go into work because Republicans decide they're going to shut the government down. With that, thank you all very much.